All right, let's talk about one of history's most, let's say, complicated figures, Aleister Crowley. Seriously, just his name brings up all these images of dark arts and forbidden secrets. But who was he really? A true prophet? A master magician? Or just a guy who was incredibly good at building his own scandalous legend?
You've probably heard this one before. This is the nickname the British tabloids gave him back in the day, and man, did it stick. It's the kind of headline that just screams evil, and it pretty much sealed the deal on his public reputation. But as you're about to see, the real story is, well, it's a whole lot weirder and way more interesting.
Because here's the thing, before he was the world's most famous occultist, he was a published poet. He was a seriously skilled mountaineer who took on some of the world's biggest peaks, like K2, a novelist. And get this, some historians are pretty convinced he was also working as a spy for British intelligence. Yeah, a spy. So that's the big question, right? How does a guy born into a super rich, super religious Christian family end up calling himself the Great Beast 666? And then, how does that same guy go on to influence some of the biggest rock and roll bands of all time? It's a wild ride. So first up, let's just tackle the myth head on. To really get Crowley, you gotta start with this larger-than-life, kind of terrifying public image that he and the press basically built together. Oh man, the newspapers just had a field day with this guy. They called him the Beast 666, a Satanist, a traitor to his country. That last one was because he wrote some pro-German stuff during World War I, though now some people think that was all part of his spy cover. His lifestyle was, well, it was perfect tabloid fodder. He was openly bisexual, a heroin addict, and just lived this completely unrestrained life. And the whole human sacrifice thing, you know where that came from? It was basically a dark joke in one of his books that people decided to take, a little too literally. Okay, so that's the legend. That's the scary guy on the tin. Now let's peel all of that back and see where this story actually begins, because it's probably the last place you'd ever expect. And when you put the legend next to the reality, wow, it's just night and day. The Beast was born Edward Alexander Crowley. His family wasn't just religious, they were part of the Plymouth Brethren, a really strict fundamentalist Christian group. And they were loaded, thanks to a family brewing business. So this isn't some story about a poor kid lashing out. This was a story of a kid who had everything and chose to reject all of it. And you're not going to believe where his most infamous nickname came from. It was his own mother. She got so fed up with him being rebellious as a kid that she started calling him the Beast from the Book of Revelation. But instead of being insulted, he loved it. He leaned into it and made it his own. It was kind of the first piece of the whole Aleister Crowley persona he was building. So his rebellion wasn't just about, acting out. It actually grew into this huge, really complex philosophical system. It basically became the center of his entire life. So, if he threw out his parents' religion, what did he believe in? Well, it wasn't Satanism, no matter what the papers said. It was something totally new, something he believed was a genuine revelation for all of humanity. And it all starts right here. Picture this, it's 1904, and Crowley and his new wife, Rose, are on their honeymoon in Cairo. All of a sudden, Rose starts going into these trances, saying that the Egyptian god Horus is trying to contact him. She actually leads him to a museum to point out an ancient artifact. And get this, its exhibit number was 666. Not long after that, Crowley says that for 3 straight days, a disembodied voice named Iwas, dictated an entire book to him. That book would become the Book of the Law. And the whole philosophy that comes out of this book is called Thelema. The big idea is that humanity is moving into a new spiritual age. He called it the Eon of Horus. And this new age is all about individual freedom and self-discovery, with him, of course, as its prophet. Now, here's the line everybody knows, even if they don't know anything else about Crowley. And it's almost always taken the wrong way. I mean, on the surface, it sounds simple, right? Do whatever you want, a free-for-all. But that is not at all what he meant. See, this gets to the core of it all, this idea of true will. Do what thou wilt isn't about chasing every little desire that pops into your head. It's about the very hard, lifelong work of figuring out your true purpose in life, your unique path, and then having the courage to follow it. For Thelemites, that's how you live in sync with the universe. Okay, so it's one thing to have a philosophy. It's another thing completely to actually try and live it. So how did Crowley try to take these big ideas and make them real?
For Crowley, the main tool for all of this was magic. And yep, he spelled it with a K at the end. That was on purpose. He wanted to make it very clear he wasn't talking about pulling rabbits out of a hat. For him, magic was a kind of spiritual science, a way to explore yourself and make your true will happen in the real world. And his most famous or infamous attempt to put all this into practice was a place he started in Sicily called the Abbey of Thelema. It was supposed to be this perfect commune, a utopia where people could live out their true wills. But it pretty much spiraled into chaos and scandal. After one of his followers died, the British press went nuts, writing all these stories about black magic and wild parties. It got so bad that eventually Benito Mussolini himself kicked Crowley out of Italy and shut the whole place down. So after a life packed with scandal, going broke, and just nonstop controversy, you'd think that would be it. You'd think Crowley would just kind of fade away into history, but he didn't. Not even close. His influence actually got bigger after he died. And what's just wild is how his ideas about rebellion and finding your true self really hit a nerve with the counterculture decades later. It was just the perfect message for a generation trying to break free from tradition. I mean, that's his face right there on the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album. Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin was a huge fan. He even had Do What Thou Wilt scratched into the vinyl of Led Zeppelin 3. Ozzy Osbourne wrote a massive hit song about him. David Bowie was super into his ideas, and his writings were a major inspiration for Gerald Gardner, who basically founded the modern religion of Wicca. His fingerprints are everywhere. And so that brings us back to the central puzzle of Aleister Crowley. Who was this guy? Was he a total con man who just built up this myth around himself? Or was he a genuine spiritual thinker who was just way, way ahead of his time? Was he a prophet for a new age? Or was he just really, really good at pushing people's buttons? That's the question he leaves us with, and it's probably why we're still talking about him today.